Hi, I'm KT McFarland. Welcome to DEFCON 3. Iran. The United States and Iran negotiating over Iran's nuclear program. Joining me today is Adam Kredo. He's a senior writer for the Washington Free Beacon and one of the writers who's broken the most information about the Iranian-American negotiations. Adam, I wanted to ask you, for the last 10 years, the United Nations, the United States, everybody's insisted that if we have a negotiation or a treaty or some kind of a deal with Iran, the fundamental principle is that Iran is going to have to give up its nuclear weapons program. It's going to have to give up the right to enrich uranium. But now it looks like this latest deal, the Iranians have announced that the treaty that we're proposing gives them the right to enrich. And initially the administration says, no, it doesn't. But now it sounds like we're saying, well, maybe. So where are we now with the Iranian negotiations, especially over this right to enrich uranium?
Yeah, well, you're right. There really has been a pointed back and forth. But I actually asked the White House about this, what exactly their position is on uranium enrichment. And they told me that they're exploring opportunities, ways to allow Iran to have at least some sort of domestic enrichment right. Now, how much that would be, just how far they could go with enrichment remains unclear. But the fact remains that they are exploring possibilities for Iran to continue at least a piece of its program. And that's upset a lot of lawmakers on Capitol Hill, because that really hasn't been the U.S. negotiating policy.
All right, well, so Iran continues these negotiations. Do you think the negotiations will ever lead to an agreement, or are they just going to go on and drag on and on as the Iranian program continues?
Well, look, there is certainly a possibility for that. There's two major things we need to look at. One, this interim agreement that was announced. The United States came back, Kerry announced the deal, but what we found is that the deal has not begun. That means that Iran is not required to hold its enrichment program until we actually hash out the final details of this deal. So it's really a deal to talk about having a deal, if you want to put it that way. And in the interim, Iran continues its enrichment capabilities. Now, if we want to talk about a final negotiation, I think that the U.S. wants it. The Obama administration has been very clear that this is their policy and they want to get to a final deal. But the Iranians, if you look back at their behavior in the past, especially President Rouhani, when he was the lead negotiator in Iran, he really found a way to drag these talks out and to go on and on and on, talking over little points here and there. So we could see these talks go on for quite a bit.
And then the pressure to lift the sanctions, it's already started. I think some of the German French automakers have already announced they want to begin sale and production of automobiles in Iran, so that even while the deal hasn't begun, in other words, they haven't stopped their centrifuges from spinning, it seems like the sanctions are already starting to lift.
Well, right, and that's the thing about sanctions. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill, they wanted to pass greater sanctions before they went home for the recess, but the White House and their Democratic allies, they effectively killed this. We won't see any sanctions through 2013. It's likely we won't see them through a great part of next year. And what this has is an actual effect on our sanctions regime now. When the Iranians see that we're not serious about enforcing or that we're hesitating, the sanctions wall begins to crumble and we're in a position where we have to plug up holes. And you're right, you've talked about car manufacturers and others. They're already seeing opportunity to reinvest in Iran, and that's where sanctions really start to lose their effect, when the global market starts to go back into the Iranian market.
Adam, one of any kind of an arms control agreement with the Iranians was supposed to do two things. One, it was supposed to dial back or control the Iranian nuclear program so they don't get nukes. The second, though, was to prevent a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. We've seen in the last several days that one of the leading Saudi diplomats has come out, and he's very critical of President Obama and the United States over the Iranian issue. Do you think that we're getting to the point where the others in the region, Israel, the Sunni Arab states, the Saudis, will look at Iran and say, look, whether they actually have nuclear weapons or they almost have nuclear weapons, it's the same thing to us. They've become a de facto nuclear weapon state. Then if they do, what then happens in the Middle East?
Yeah, I think you're right. The fear is there, and you're right. It's not just a matter of the Iranians announcing that they have nuclear weapons capabilities, that they can fire nuclear weapons. It's about having the know-how. And it's pretty clear that at this point, Iran has a lot of know-how on the nuclear front. And that is, of course, sparking fear across the region. Not just the Saudis, not just the Israelis, but a lot of Arab leaders, even quietly, are expressing fear about this and wondering what exactly they need to do to combat this threat. And they do see it as a threat, and it could come down to the Israelis having to take action. We know Netanyahu and his government is serious, and it could really come down to that as we get closer and closer to the Iranians having this capability. And the breakout capability could just be months away.
But, you know, when people have said, well, the military option is always on the table, it's on the table, what would a military option at this point look like? And what would let's say the Israelis do employ a military option, what does that do for Israeli-American relations?
Yeah, that's a really good question. From the Israeli side, I think they have to think about it as in going it alone. Will the Obama administration back them? I find that difficult to believe at this point, especially with the talks that are taking place. So what could the Israelis feasibly do? They could set it back. They could target key installations, key sites. But we know the Iranians and their nuclear program, a lot of it is secret. A lot of it is buried deep beneath the ground. So it's difficult to hit. They need these advanced bunker buster missiles. And it's unclear just how much the Israelis could do rather than maybe set them back a little bit.
So is there any leverage remaining to try to get Iran to dial back its nuclear program?
Well, look, I think the leverage is going to come through these talks. The leverage is also going to come from the United States being serious that we will not sit all day in these talks, that we are prepared to take action. Think about the last time you heard a U.S. leader in a serious position talk about a viable military action towards Iran. You're not hearing this type of talk right now, and the Iranians hear this and they listen to it and they know. Okay,
well, thank you very much. Adam Kredo, Washington Free Beacon. He's a senior writer, and I suggest you all go to Twitter at Kredo. He's got the latest on what's going on with the Iranian nuclear weapons negotiations. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.